May 11th, and our next set of the OTA over-the-air stat and card text changes have come to Marvel Snap. We have text changes to 4 cards, 2 buffs, and 2 nerfs. Let's go ahead and dive on into what those are and read the Snap developers' justifications for the changes that they are making here. Starting with Drax. The Guardians can create some of the more exciting gameplay in Snap with their predictive style. While they've been doing better with the release of Nebula, they're still performing poorly overall. Out of all the Guardians, Drax stood out as the clearest buff candidate. Compared to other cards like Rockslide and White Queen with good stats and a guaranteed upside, Drax had below average stats and a very inconsistent upside. We're giving him a small buff to push his power up from his baseline performance. So, something that's interesting as a take for things that are coming. Next week on the 16th, we have a patch that is bringing back Kitty Pryde. And I think Kitty Pryde actually makes a card like Drax better, because Kitty Pryde's a card I want to spend 1 energy on every turn. So being able to like Kitty Pryde plus Drax on turn 5 with a Daredevil, for example, sounds like a reasonable thing to be doing if I'm playing kind of one off curve with my stuff. This is basically a strict upgrade from what it was before. There's Asterisk, the Edge case. It's technically worse if you're looking to Absorbing Man your Drax, but basically a strict upgrade here, and a good one. Drax was definitely an underplayed and fairly weak card. Up next, we have Rockslide. Still shuffling 2 rocks at 4 cost into the opponent's deck, but they are shaving 1 point of power off of it. This is a good change. So I've talked about if I expected if I expected nerfs to happen out of this OTA update today, I expected them to take a couple points of power off of cards inside of the good stuff deck, which is the Stature, Black Bolt, Miles Morales, Darkhawk, Zabu deck. So they are explicitly looking to make Darkhawk weaker in tandem with Zabu. So this is a very small change overall. It's going to make the card a bit worse in the Dino Hawk deck. Rockslide is the easier one to adjust, so they're starting there. I honestly would not be surprised if we see more changes to Darkhawk. It's still very large, but this is a nice minimalist change. And as someone who enjoys playing Darkhawk inside of the Beast Bounce deck that doesn't play Rockslide, great. My Darkhawks are still the same there. It nerfs Cerebro 6, but it buffs Cerebro 5. Speaking of buffing Cerebro 5 and nerfing Cerebro 6, Enchantress is splitting the difference between where she was and where she is now. So going from 4-6 down to 4-5 was previously a 4-4. Enchantress has grown in popularity since our buff 2 weeks ago, which we expected. While we're excited by how much more she's affecting the meta, she's become one of the most played cards in the game, which is over the mark. We're optimistic that the small nerf will put her in a good position going forward, but it was fun while it lasted. This change is great, and I think it shows why these consistent over-the-air updates are such a good thing for a live service card game like Marvel Snap. They wanted to put Enchantress into the format. They shot high. They overshot a little bit, and now they're pulling her back 2 weeks later with a small change. The biggest flexibility that these over-the-air updates give is that it takes the pressure off of the devs to get everything right the first time. They could take a shot like this, and if the numbers don't match what they wanted, they could dial it back a little bit too. And the opposite is true, right? Like they could dial up cards again if they buff and they don't get them to the new numbers where they want to be. Our last card change today is a buff that I think will make many people happy. I'm interested to see if this one will move the needle. Venom, going from a 3-1 to a 3-3 at the base power. Venom's been the worst Destroy Enabler for a while, averaging lower power in Destroy decks than his peers Deathlock and Carnage. While he's seen fringe use in decks with Taskmaster, we haven't seen any of those really take off. We'd like to give one of Marvel's most iconic anti-heroes space to shine, so we're feeding him a hardy +2 buff. That's true, right? Like a question that frequently would come up when I'm trying to play destroy decks that had Deathlock, and people are like, why are you playing Deathlock and not Venom? And the answer is like, well, most of the time when you were playing Deathlock, a 3/5 is bigger than Venom would be. So it's funny, I actually have a Venom deck that I've been wanting to try with Iron Lad and Nimrod, and I was holding off in case Nimrod got a change today, because that's a card that also feels a little bit weak, but Venom getting a buff makes me equally glad that I held off, so we'll be trying that here on stream here once we finish talking about these. There's more than just card changes coming in this over-the-air update, by the way, as well. Location, location, location. As our library of locations increases, we'll be making ongoing adjustments to hit the sweet spot we like for dynamic games. To that end, we are reducing the appearance of a few of our locations, which means they'll show up less frequently in your games. It's unlikely you'll consciously observe these changes, but we thought you'd like to know. They're reducing Adeline. Okay, I'm happy about most of these, but good. Fuck this location in particular. This one jacks up so many of my favorite decks. Krakoa, Gulia, Morag, Plunder Castle, Sanctum Sanctorum, and Subterranea. So here's another interesting thing to note here as well. 2 of these locations that are going to be appearing less frequently now are locations that are good for Darkhawk, and a few of these are locations that are good for Doctor Doom and good for Jeff the Landshark. So these location changes shave percentage points off of cards that are powerful and omnipresent in the format without actually touching those cards, which that's a really neat balancing mechanic that they have at their fingertips, right? So just for reference for people that don't know, Adelan is the after turn 3, shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 3 cards. Krakoa is the turn 5 mini ego. Gulia is put 3 rocks in your deck when you play a card here. Morag is your first card can't be played here. Plunder Castle is you can only play 6 drops here. Sanctum Sanctorum is nobody can play anything here. And Subterranea is everybody's favorite, just put 5 rocks in both decks. So, yeah, I think this is great. And they didn't even call out that these are going to be impacting cards, but I like that. I like the thought process, again, what's going on here, and thinking about the cards that they impact in the game. That's all. Thanks for stopping by. This is the second to last week of our OTA trial period, with a full-size patch coming up next week, and then the final OTA coming on 5/25. We've not yet set a plan going forward, and we want to continue. We know that we want to continue doing regular balance updates, just at longer intervals between changes. We'll let you know when we have more to share. So, to give a little spoiler/teaser for people that aren't plugged into everything Snap, there was a dev answer to a question in the Marvel Snap Discord server that said, stay tuned for wave nerfs coming up. And there's no wave nerfs in here, which makes me think if we're staying tuned, maybe that means we're going to see something coming in the patch where they change text boxes. So again, the difference between card changes in an OTA and card changes in a patch is card changes in the OTA change numbers on the card. So like Drax here, they can change numbers in the text box, they can change cost, they can change power, but they can't change what the text actually does. So we didn't just see a numbers change to wave in this patch, so I wonder if the text is going to be different when we get an actual patch. And again, also for clarity's sake, this was said here, but there is no OTA update on the 18th, because there is a patch on the 16th, and then the final OTA will be on the 25th. Overall, really happy with this set of changes again. I'm really glad that they're having the flexibility to dial back things they felt like they overbuffed. We're seeing more changes to underplayed cards like Drax and Venom. We're seeing small changes to the best deck to just try and bring their points down in line. No notes. Very happy. So we play some games?